Every life tells a story, and every story shares a lesson. This summer, we're looking at different characters of the Bible and to see what their life stories share. But sometimes the best way to hear those stories is by looking at them from a different perspective. So today we're going to hear the story of a desperate father. And if you'd like to join and follow along in your Bible, you can turn, give you just a minute here to turn to John chapter 4, and we're going to be in verse 46 through 54 this morning. John 4, 46 through 54.
Well, hello there. It's always good to see some fellow travelers. I'm Jonathan of Capernaum, and I'm on my way to Tiberias. I just got to take a second to catch my breath and rest for a moment. Why am I going to Tiberias, you ask? Well, I'm supposed to go there to meet Herod Antipas. You see, I'm one of his officials, and I've got some news to share with him. You see, something amazing has happened. I got to experience a miracle. Something amazing. It was the best day ever, and I just got to tell Herod what happened, because he's got to want to know about this. Oh, it was the best day ever. Oh, and everyone's going to find out about this. You're curious, aren't you? Well, if you got some time, I'd love to share with you what happened. In fact, maybe the story will even help you out a little bit as well. And I promise, these words I'm about to say, I'm not making them up. I truly believe, and this truly happened. I want you to know this was the best day ever. But before we can get to this best day ever, I have to warn you, it starts with the worst day ever. A day where I was at my lowest, most desperate point. You see, I came home early that day. Normally, a servant or two is preparing the food for that evening. My wife will have a friend over. My son, my little boy, he'd be running around from place to place, just bouncing off the walls with all his energy. I have no idea where he gets that from, but he's full of it. But when I entered my home that day a week ago, it wasn't the same. I couldn't smell any food being prepared. There was silence. The room felt cold a little bit. And that's when I heard a cough out in the other room. So I rushed into our sleeping quarters, and there I saw my son in the bed with my wife and the servant next to him. The servant pulled me aside and shared with me what's going on. That apparently sometime that day, my son got sick really fast. He had broken out into a fever. He wasn't eating anything, and all of a sudden he could no longer walk. He had no energy. He was stuck in the bed. But the doctor was coming soon, and I was sure this doctor he would figure it out. He would know what's going on, and he would heal my son and give him life again. The doctor came. He examined my boy for a little bit, but I knew something was off whenever he wanted to speak to my wife and I privately. So he pulled us to the side as well. And I'll never forget the words that he said to me. He said, "There's nothing more we can do. Your son will not live much longer." And it took a minute for those words to really sink in. There's nothing more we can do. You're the doctor. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to bring life. You're supposed to heal. You're supposed to fix what's broken. And I thought maybe it was just the money. Maybe he's not getting enough money. Maybe he wants something more from me. So I say, hey, if it's about money, I can get you the money. If you want to meet Herod, I'll get you to Herod. But he kept saying the words over and over and over again. Your son will not live. Your son will not live. Your son will not live. And after he left, my wife and I just grieved together. And we tried to come up with all sorts of different solutions or ways to resolve this because there's nothing more we can do. My son won't live. My son who I remember holding in my 2 arms. My son who I've seen utter his first words and take his first steps. My son won't marry one day and have a great celebration. He won't one day have kids of his own where he'll be able to pass on his wisdom and see his kids grow up. My son is going to die, and I'll have to bury him. And the doctor was right. We scrambled. We tried to come up with some ideas, but there was nothing we could do. Nothing would work in all of our thinking, in all of our planning, all of our solutions. And at that point, I was coming to the realization that this was happening. And that's when a servant rushed into my home late at night, and he sparked the one last ember of hope I had in my soul. It took him a second to catch his breath. But eventually he gulped down some air, and then he said, Sir, there's rumors going around that there's a man who can perform miracles down in Judea. He's performing all sorts of signs. They say that people are coming to him that are sick, and that he can heal them just by touching them. I think he can heal your son. And I cynically laughed. Yeah, right. A miracle man, a miracle worker. We haven't had someone like that in Israel in years. And you're supposed to expect that I believe you, that this guy just showed up and is now performing all of these healing wonders? I mean, give me a break. It can't possibly be true. But what if it is true? After all, there were some rumblings going on a while back about how there was this guy that could turn water into wine, and he did that at some wedding in Cana. And if that's the case, maybe this guy is real. And those words have tormented me ever since that doctor said it. There's nothing you can do. If there's nothing I can do, then what's there to lose? This servant of mine, he said that the guy's name was Jesus of Nazareth, that he's actually back up in Galilee. He's in the village of Cana, and that people are claiming that he is the Messiah, that he's God's anointed, chosen king. And as I hear all that, I'm thinking to myself, okay, yeah, well, who cares about that? Cana's about a half day's trip away. If I leave now, if I leave in the early morning, as soon as the sun rises, I can get there about noon. And so I set it, the resolve in myself that next morning I'm going to go and I'm going to do whatever it takes to convince this Jesus to come and heal my son. Of course, that night was restless. The words tormented me. I just could not fall asleep. I slept. I just could not get over the weight of everything going on. But when I did wake up and get ready for the day, I put on my best, most expensive tunic. The one that I only wear when I'm in Herod Antipas's palace. I don't wear it on any other occasion because I would be so embarrassed if I just got dirty and messy and then I had to go before him one day. So I don't normally wear it, but today was different. Maybe if Jesus saw my expensive clothing, if he knew I was an official of Herod, maybe then that would be enough to convince him to come with me back to Capernaum. And so I left. I head on to Cana, and the whole way long I'm reciting exactly what I'm going to say to Jesus, exactly what I need to say to convince him to come back with me. I recite it until I knew within my bones exactly the words I needed to say. And when I get to Cana, it didn't take me long to find Jesus. If you don't know, Cana is a really small village, and even just a small cluster of people looks like a giant crowd here. And there was one crowd right in the middle of the town. As I looked from a distance, I couldn't pick out Jesus. I was really hoping I could so I could pull him to the side and have a private conversation. But there was just this crowd of people together. It turns out Jesus, he travels with these disciples from city to city to city. And so I couldn't figure out who he was. He looked just like everyone else. No one stood out. They were just all laughing and having a good time together. So I eventually muster up the courage to just start calling out, Jesus of Nazareth. I'm looking for Jesus of Nazareth. There's one man sitting down. He looks up and turns towards my direction. And apparently that was Jesus, because the crowd or the cluster of people splits off and makes a way for me to come in. And I'm really surprised, because this guy, he's nothing really special. He's not a head taller than everyone else. He's not wearing anything extravagant or flamboyant. He looks just like a normal, everyday guy. And as I stand right in front of him, I realize that I don't know what to do. Like, how am I supposed to address Jesus in front of me, this miracle guy? Like, am I supposed to say something to him? Am I supposed to bow before him? Am I supposed to, like, get him a gift or something? I had no idea. And as I stood there, I was just standing there in kind of awkward silence, and some people behind me are starting to, like, giggle and snicker a little bit, and I get embarrassed easily. I'm very self-conscious, and my skin, my cheeks, they flush red, and eventually I get over it, though, because my son needs me. And so I eventually recite what I was going to say to him. I say, "Sir, my name is Jonathan of Capernaum. I've heard who you are. I've heard that you perform these signs and wonders. I've heard that you can heal someone just by touching them. And sir, my son, my boy, he's very sick, and the doctor said there's nothing we can do. Please come to Capernaum with me. Please come and just heal my son. If you want, I can give you however much money you need. If you want to have a meeting with Herod, I will take you to Herod. But please, come to Capernaum. Please, show me that you can heal him. Please, I want to believe that you can." In what feels like hours of silence, Jesus doesn't say anything. Instead, he puts his head down into his hand, and just starts shaking it. I'm thinking, great, I messed up. I was supposed to bring a gift, wasn't I? I was supposed to bow down before him or something, wasn't I? And then he stands up, and he looks at me eye to eye. And, I was a little bit ready and prepared for his rejection, but I wasn't ready for what he was going to say next. And as he looks at me in the eyes, he lifts his arms up and begins to address the crowd that's around him. And he says, "You all just come to me expecting miracles. And unless I perform signs and wonders and you see these things happen, you will never believe." And those words, they felt like a stab to the chest. Because I believed in Jesus, didn't I? I believed he could heal my son. He could perform these miracles. After all, I spent hours traveling to meet him and visit him. Surely I believe in him. Don't I? But what if instead he chooses not to heal my son? What if he just decides to go on his way and never even decides to follow me back? What will I do? Do I really believe he is? Or was I just using Jesus for my own personal desires and gain? Was I being selfish? Did I have a shallow faith? My eyebrows, they furrowed because I decided in that moment there, no. I couldn't wait to see Jesus perform some sign to then believe him. I had to have faith that he was who he was now. And so at that point, I say some more words to Jesus, and this time it's not recited, it's not something I came up with. Instead, I just decided to speak from the heart in desperation. And I fell to my knees, and I began to beg. I grabbed at his robe, and I pulled on it, and I said, Jesus, please, I believe in you. I know you can heal my son. Please come to Capernaum with me. I know it. Please, you can do this. You can. Please come heal my son. I need you to heal my son. And I wanted to keep speaking and keep talking, but eventually the emotions overwhelmed me, and I just became so overwhelmed that I couldn't speak anymore. I started to hyperventilate. My breathing just kept increasing and intensifying. And Jesus, he falls down and gets on my level. And at that point, I realized, and seeing his robe get all dusty and dirty, that my own cloak was getting dusty and dirty, but at that point I didn't care. And then he puts his hand on my shoulder. I remember hearing 4 words I certainly never will forget. He said, "Go, your son lives." And I took a second to compose myself, and I took the tears and pushed them off of my eyes, and I looked up and met him eye to eye. And I saw the most confident, warm look back to me. And I knew it. I knew Jesus healed my son. I knew that if I left from that moment, I would go back and I would see my son fully healed as if he was never sick before. I believed in Jesus' words. And I became so overwhelmed that I embraced Jesus, and all I could say was, thank you, I believe you, thank you. And we stand up, and I begin to lift my arms and my eyes up to praise God, and I thank him for this moment. And all of a sudden, I noticed the sun. It's about an hour after noon. It's the 7th hour. And normally, that wouldn't really be a big deal, but if I was to leave from that point, I would not make it back home in time. I'd have to stop somewhere overnight. And I realized that, so I start trying to close the conversation because I need to get going. And I say, Jesus, if there's anything, and before I have a chance to finish my sentence, Jesus says, go, Jonathan of Capernaum, you have a son waiting for you back home. And so I run until I get back home that day, going as fast as I can, except I ran about a minute and a half, and I got exhausted, so I began walking with confident speed until I got home. I had to stay overnight first, get up the next day, continue my journey. So excited, so hopeful to see my son again. And as I near the city of Capernaum, there's 2 men that start running out of the city towards me in my direction. I covered my eyes to see them, and I realize it's 2 of my servants. And my shoulders slump a little bit. Because I gotta admit, for a moment there, I thought they were coming to share with me the news that my son did die. That the doctor's words were right. And I should have believed his words instead of Jesus' words. But as they got closer, I realized that, they're not sad, they're not desperate, they're not concerned. They actually have this joyousness in them. And when we finally meet, they're trying to catch their breath. They're trying to catch their breath so they can talk to me. And eventually one of them gulps that gasp of air down, and he finally says, your son lives. And I am blown away at that point. Because it's like the servant is quoting Jesus verbatim. My son is alive. He is healed. He is no longer sick anymore. They say that he is up. He's walking. He's running. He's eating again. And they said that it would look like he was never sick in the first place. And we get ongoing. We are entering the city at this point, and I'm so excited. I'm so thankful. I'm praising God for this moment. And as I'm doing this, as I'm thinking about this, and as I'm recalling what has happened, there's still one last question that I had to ask them. So I turn to the servants and I say, so about what time did my son start to get better? And one of the servants, he perks up and he says, sir, I know exactly when he was healed. I know the exact moment your son wasn't sick anymore because I was right next to him when it happened. It was yesterday at the 7th hour. And it's at that point where my mind connected the dots and it made sense of everything. Because at the exact moment Jesus said, your son lives, my son regained life. The very moment that Jesus uttered his words and declared that my son was healed was the very exact moment that my son was healed. And it's at that moment I knew that it was Jesus who healed my son. It wasn't mere coincidence. It wasn't just some circumstance, but it was Jesus and his power and his ability was the one, even though he was hours and hours away from my son, he is the one that brought life to my son again. And when I got home, I see my son running around, bouncing off the walls, as if nothing was any different. And I embraced my son and I gave him the tightest, biggest hug that I've ever given someone before, as I knew what had happened. And that night, we had the biggest celebration we have ever had. This was an amazing feast of celebration of what has taken place. And as we were eating and enjoying and celebrating the healing of my son, I shared with them all that had happened. How I met Jesus and talked with him, and how at the 7th hour, Jesus said, your son lives. And at the 7th hour, my son lived. And at that very moment, it wasn't just me who believed in Jesus, but my wife did too. And so did my son. And so did the servants in my household. We all believe that Jesus truly does perform signs and wonders and miracles. We believe that those miracles and signs and wonders prove that he was God's Messiah. And for us, not only do we believe that, but we believe that Jesus' words can truly bring life. Well, I better get going. I need to really go share with Herod this. Thank you for giving me some time to just kind of recount and recollect my thoughts before I go and talk with him, because I want to make sure he knows exactly who this Jesus is, who the Messiah is. And maybe one day Herod Antipas and Jesus will meet, and wouldn't that be something if that ever happened? I wonder what they might do as they talk with each other. I hope one day, though, that you also can encounter Jesus for yourself. I hope that one day you can experience the amazing life that he can bring. But if you ever encounter Jesus, please don't forget that if you want Jesus to give you life, you just have to believe his words.